Um, Good evening, everyone. We thank you for tuning in to our live session. This is part 5 of a series entitled The Bridge Meets. We have been talking to various stakeholders on what it's like to live and work in Rwanda. We have previously used Instagram, so Insta Live, but we previously ran into problems, technical issues, so we decided to bring it to Zoom this time, and we are recording the whole session, and we will post it on our social media platforms for everyone to watch and basically be inspired. Today, we're going to be joined by a Rwandan. We are joined by a Rwandan entrepreneur, Henri Nyakarundi. He's the CEO and founder of Africa Renewable Energy Distributor, ARED Group. You probably know of their unique solar product, the Shariki Hub, which he's going to explain in detail. It's a portable kiosk available for lease that charges mobile devices. Henri is also an author, he's a mentor, he's a speaker, and he's a social entrepreneur. He inspires so many young people in Rwanda, and I'm sure across the continent. He's going to be our guest today. Henri, it's very nice to have you tonight, or today, as I'm sure some people are already, it's before noon for most of our viewers who are based in the US. For everyone who is following, I would like you to ask questions later on. There'll be a Q&A, but I would suggest that you write the questions in the chat, the comment section, so that way we do not have to have so many people speaking. And I'm going to be reading out loud the questions for Henri, and then Henri is going to answer. Henri, thank you so much for joining us. You studied abroad, but you came back. You were an entrepreneur. You went to school abroad, and then you eventually decided to come back to Rwanda. Let's start with this. What factors led to your decision to launch your career back home?
Yeah, thank you, Bright, and thank you, guys. I know we had to delay this another week, but yeah, briefly. I mean, the short story is I moved to the States in '96 for college, and then for most of you guys who probably were not born by then, but if you remember, in the region, it was really challenging. I grew up in Burundi. Then in '96, I graduated from high school. We had family in the States. I went there to do college, but like a lot of people, I ended up staying there for 17 years. But after 2008, the financial crisis of 2008, I started coming back on the continent, Burundi, Rwanda, just to see what was going on. And economically, the States was not doing well. And I started seeing the changes, especially in Rwanda. I remember the first time I came back, I came back in Rwanda on vacation in 2001. But in 2008, that's when the second time I came back on vacation also. And that's when RDB was just starting. And I was amazed by all those new concepts. So from 2008 to 2009, I knew it was time for me to come back home. But it took another 3 years for me to come back because I wanted to come back with a project. And that's when the idea of ARED was born. Between between 2009 to 2013, I developed the prototype, and then 2013, actually December 2012, that's when I bought a one-way ticket. I sold everything. I mean, I had a business in the States. I sold everything. I sold my property, everything I had, and I just came back.
Oh, that's powerful. Well, how was your settling in? You having lived abroad, having gone to school abroad, having worked abroad for such a long time, and deciding to come back. I imagine the transition, the settling in must have been challenging. Could you briefly share with us what was the process like for you, and what was what did it feel like? What were the challenges when you came back to actually leave and do work here?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is, I was never, well, the challenge was the language. For example, people were making fun of me because I don't speak Kinyarwanda. You know, the challenges was also how slow things were moving. Even now, America is fast paced. So I was used to that fast pace and the hustle, the grind, and things here were much, much slower. So that was a little bit frustrating for me. The other thing was, the ecosystem was not well developed. Things have been changing since I came back 7 years ago. So the ecosystem was still very difficult for entrepreneur yet. There was not a big entrepreneurship scheme already, ecosystem. There was only K-Lab, I remember, for accelerator programs. There was not all this co-offices, and the investment ecosystem was not well developed. So all that was very challenging, because I still depended on a lot of dealing with outside Rwanda to look for funding and all those things. But the language was the biggest challenge.
The language, people make fun of you, huh?
Yeah, I mean, Rwanda, we're so proud of our language, our culture. If you can't call yourself Munyarwanda and then you start speaking Nyarwanda, they're like, well, where you from, man? Where you been?
Sometimes they think you're faking it. They're like, look at
I
them.
know.
They go abroad and they come back and they don't remember Kinyarwanda at all.
Or they think you're pretending. They're like, they didn't talk to you in Kinyarwanda and your family. It's like, no, man. Our home was speaking either French or English. And I really blame my parents for that, man. And my generation, because the new generation is different. I'm glad my kids, for example, I make sure that they speak Kinyarwanda. Like I really, but for us, it was different, man. It was a different time. We grew up as refugees in Burundi, so we're trying to blend in, if I can call it. And so it was different, man. It was a different time. But yeah, I never really, it's only now, and even now my Kinyarwanda is not that great. But I manage better.
I'm tempted to taste you.
No, please don't, man. I don't want to embarrass myself in front of everybody, man.
I will not do that here. Well, so Henry, you specifically chose to do business entrepreneurship in the energy sector. Why specifically the energy sector?
So it started with the energy sector, but things have evolved since then. But I looked at when I made the decision to come back, I looked at two sectors. I look at the energy sector and the agricultural sector. Those are the two sectors to this day. Those are the two main sectors with huge potential. And of course, now you have different sectors like e-commerce and all, but still, those were the two sectors I was looking at. Agricultural sector at that time, it was not appealing to me because I didn't feel like going into farming and going up country. But the energy sector was very appealing because there was not, even now, there's not that many African players in that game, So I was like, okay. And then within that sector, I wanted to do something innovative because when you talk about energy or any sector, it's a very broad spectrum, right? So yeah. I was very focused on phone charging initially. That was the initial idea. Because what I saw was the growth of cell phones in communities, but the lack of, being able to charge it in different places or location you are in a high traffic area, you have problem charging your phone. It's not just a problem of access to electricity, but even if you're in a marketplace or in a bus stops, you don't have plugs or places to charge your phone. So I thought it would be very interesting to have a charging kiosk that is solar powered. And that was the initial idea. Now the idea has evolved into more digital aspect with Wi-Fi connectivity and digital services that is also built in within this kiosk. But initially phone charging was the big idea.
Yeah. Did you when you moved home, did you already have that idea, or it's something you saw here and you decided was a great opportunity for you to tap into, to basically turn the challenge, the problem into an opportunity?
No, the initial idea was phone charging. I thought I was gonna make enough money just on charging phone. I quickly realized that was not going to be the case. Again, I came with this American mindset. I thought I was going to make $1 per charge.
Yeah.
We first started in Yabugogo, and I remember clearly because I remember doing a little bit of market research, and that's a mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make. But that's how I like to do business. I just jump into, but I quickly realized $1 was just ridiculous, right? Yeah. So it was actually 10 cents, and the whole business model was out the door as soon as I realized the max I can do is 10 cents per charge. But then also being on the ground and looking at the ecosystem, I study a lot the existing agents, those agents that you see to this day. And then those are slowly the other ideas came about from the experience I had on the ground. But initially it was just phone charging. I mean, I don't have it anymore, but I remember developing the business plan, and I was like, wow, $1 a day, I can charge 30, 40 phones. I'm going to be successful in less than 6 months. I mean, it was just, but that's what an entrepreneur has to go through. You have to come up with you have to lay down the concept that you think is going to work, and then you have to test that model. You always have to test your model. And most of the time you're going to pivot on at least 3 to 4 times on average before you find a successful model. That's the way entrepreneurship is.
That's great. Actually, let's jump into that. What has your kiosk, what has your business evolved into now? What are some of the things you do? What are some of the products you have on the market? And what has been the experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information, but let me try to sum it up. I mean, hardware business is a different type of business than software. We are hardware and a software company. So we have a hardware components. Now we have actually 2 hardware components. We have the kiosk that most people know, but we developed a mini server, if you want to call it, a high capacity router solution that is built in within the kiosk. That's our second products. And then you have the software components that control our whole ecosystem that also develop. But hardware is very difficult, especially for Africa, because there's no hardware development companies you can find. So all of our development was done overseas, and then it's extremely expensive. Hardware development is extremely expensive. It's not like software where you can just launch a MVP, a minimum valuable products on the ground, test it. Even if it has glitches, you can fix it as you go. You can't do that with hardware, because hardware can it can fall into somebody if it's not well designed. You're dealing with batteries, it can burn. So you have to have something that is solid, that is not going to have a negative impact on the ground. So that's what some of the challenges we have. But we pivoted again. What we do now is we created what we call a one-stop shop platform. We're trying to really optimize or develop a smart digital network on the ground, and that's really what we're doing now. Phone charging is still our core. It's still part of the business, but it's no longer our core business. Our core business now is how to bring or to bridge this gap of digital access for low-income people in rural area, semi-urban area, and refugee camps, and even in some urban area. So we're promoting now 2 products: the kiosk business, mostly in rural areas and semi-urban area, and then we're promoting our mini server products, mostly in urban setting. And that's really what we do as a company now, and all the pivoting. We've pivoted at least 7 times in the last 7 years. And we shifted to a B2C business model to a B2B model, because again, and that's another thing I want to share to some of you guys who might be entrepreneur. One of the challenges in Africa is the ecosystem, the value chain of the business ecosystem is not well developed. So a lot of time, us African, we tend to do too much in business. You develop a product or service, then you have to implement the products and service, then you have to develop the training program for that service. So it's not like in the States where you can plug in some other company into your value chain that already has developed part of that value chain, so you don't have to spend so much money trying to develop everything yourself. So that's some of the problem and challenges we have on the continent. And that's why you see companies or businesses doing too much, because they're trying to fill so many gaps. But the problem now is you're spending a lot of money. You have to hire a lot of people. It eats off your margins. And a lot of time you're not able to build a sustainable business.
That's interesting. So as I told you, we have so many young people who study abroad. Every year they graduate. We have students going to the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, studying mainly courses in agriculture. But we also have another network of globally educated young Rwandans, young professionals. And one of the challenges, one of the questions we always come across is how do you transition? What if you want to come back? There are two things. Some students think about, I want to go back and do business. I want to go back and find a challenge, provide a solution, and make money doing that. Others think, I think that's a huge challenge. That's too risky. I want to go back and find a job and get established. In your experience, what advice would you give to such a person who is thinking business, but they are not sure, they have no idea what doing business is like in Rwanda?
Well, the first thing I would tell anybody who wants to start entrepreneurship is what's your level of stress, stress capacity? How much stress can you handle? Because business always look great on interviews and documentary when you hear the success stories and all, but the reality is that 85% of businesses fail. You're going to on average, you're going to fail 3 times, and I'm giving you average. I failed for 10 years before I built my first successful business. For 10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
And you didn't give up.
No, I mean, for me, business was, I looked at my skill sets, right? I was good in sport, but I was not going to make it NBA. I loved basketball. I was terrible in academics. I mean, I like to be honest with people. I did graduate, by the way. So please make sure you finish school. But academics was not my thing. But entrepreneurship that's something I understood. It makes sense. I'm very practical and common sense. You put 100% of your effort, you get something back. I was never a good employee. Most of my jobs, I got fired. And again, it's just my personality. I like to do things and take risk. I love taking risk, and I believe that. And I'm very extremely persistent. So for 10 years, yes, I failed. But during that 10 years, what I didn't understand, I understood later on was I accumulated so much information, and I was getting better and better and better without even realizing. So you have to have a long-term mentality, number one. These things when I talk to a lot of young men or women, especially the men, they're looking for, they think business is, you're getting started on Friday, 6 months later, you're going to raise $100,000, $1 million, and then in a year, you're going to be rich. That's not what entrepreneurship, it's a lonely road, number one. It's extremely lonely, guys. It's extremely tough. You're going to have rejection. You have to be, rejection is part of business. Out of 1 yes, you're going to have at least 50 no's. But it's extremely fulfilling. I don't want to sound like it's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just that it's really a mindset game. You have to be tough mentally to be successful in business, because you have to not just develop a good products, not be able to figure out how to make this business work, but you have to deal with all this different things happening, whether it's negative challenges, ecosystem not responding, people not want to sign or do a partnership and all. So all this you have to manage pretty much on your own or with a co-founder for a period of 3 to 5 years. I mean, that's lonely. On top of that, you have family telling you, hey, stop borrowing money from me. I remember, I got so many stories, but my mom and my sister, man, they got tired of me failing. They were like, man, get a job, man. Stop calling us.
How long did it take before you were profitable when you started business in Rwanda?
No, our business right now is still not profitable, but it's a different type of business. This is when you deal with social impact, it's a much different type of business.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a long time. I mean, first of all, it took us 5 years to develop the final product that we can commercialize. So already you have to factor that in. For 5 years, we couldn't commercialize. We've been in business for 7 years. And then now you have to add well, starting, when did we start expansion? Now, we did pilots in Uganda 2 years ago, but starting November, that's the first year we actually started expansion in Nigeria. We're in Burkina Faso now. We just started in Ivory Coast. So it'll take us another 2 to 3 years before we can break even. But my first successful business was in trucking. And it took me 2 years to be profitable. Yeah. But that was the turning point for me. That business, if I had failed that business, I wouldn't have been an entrepreneur, because it was getting so bad. Like, you lose friends. I mean, this is the reality, man. You know, people don't want to be around you because, you know, they think you're going to ask them money. And that's just the reality. That's why I say it's lonely. So you have to be mentally strong. You have to be so confident about yourself and believe that what you're doing is right. You know, that's going to be the engine, the fuel that's going to keep you going when everybody else or most people don't believe in you. Because, you know, one thing I learned in life, most humans, we move by sight, not by faith. We believe in what we see, right? You know, we don't believe in vision. You can sit around 20 people and share your vision without having a product and services. 99% of those people will just walk out because they cannot see what you see. You know, that vision is given to you. So most of us, we believe in what we see, you know, and because of that, that's why it's so lonely, because until you achieve certain key steps or key KPIs, as they call it, then people start, oh, okay, now this guy is doing this. Oh, now I see what you're doing. Oh, okay, now I understand what you're doing. But in the beginning, it's lonely. It's really lonely.
Yeah. Huh. Henry, thank you so much. I think we're going to jump into questions. We have already 3 questions. I'll start with the first question. Damien Yoshuti says, recently you made a vlog about valuation game, which was such an interesting and critical concept. What's your thoughts for inspiring young entrepreneurs to tap into this complicated game in the lines of raising substantial capital in Africa in particular?
You know, valuation is a very interesting game because valuation is just you know, it's like selling. It's you selling a value to someone or an entity, and if they buy into that value, then that's what the company's value. And especially in tech, in some sectors like tech and all, valuation is very abstract, meaning it's not based, the traditional valuation is always based on your net revenue, not even gross, net revenue. Then you have a multiple or whatever you agree with the investors, and then that becomes your valuation. But now with tech, because tech is mostly about how you grow the user base, and then revenue comes after. So now your customer has some type of value. Your IP, your software products, also you can use that as a valuation. But in Africa, we don't do that, right? That game is played only in the West, in the States, in Europe, but in Africa, most investors will try to value you based on the traditional valuation that we accustomed to, which is revenue. And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs, I believe, getting killed on value. I've seen entrepreneurs raising $10,000, $20,000 on a fintech, trying to survive, and on a fintech where you know you're going to need millions of dollars just on getting a license now. You know, a lot of the regulation, licensing alone in Rwanda is $100,000. You have to have $100,000 for fintech to guarantee. That's the minimum. So, and then that's why you see a lot of companies goes register in Europe, in London, in the States, and all those things, because the valuation game is much more advanced or developed, I could say, than in Africa. Uh, so and we sell ourselves short because we don't know the game, right? When you come and somebody presents you $10,000 for 50%, I'm just giving you an example,
Yeah.
10 grand for 50% of your company. We, as a young entrepreneur, of course, if you're just getting started, you think it's a lot of money, depending on the sector you're in. But when you deal with development and all those things, it's not that much money. And we sell valuation. I mean, we sell equity of our company, not understanding the game. So we need to educate ourselves with that game, or we're not going to succeed. All this stuff is I call it a game. It is a game, because also valuation is a lot about networking. You have to spend at least 50% of your time networking into the space of the financial sector. So that's the way I would answer that question.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to that, but I'll not ask it yet. We have quite a few questions here that I would like to first go through. One participant asks, do your investors have interest in social impact measurements other than revenue?
Yeah, so 100% of our investors come, again, from overseas, right? So mostly Europe. We have some from the States. So we 90% of our funding are social impact investors, Green Tech Capital, Village Capital, and others. I'm pretty much forgetting. Collab, it's another one from Atlanta. So but that, don't get caught up with the word impact investors, because a lot of them also look at the traditional value. A lot of people use this word of impact investment as a way to sell their fund.
What does this word mean exactly? It's thrown around so many times. Impact investment, social enterprise. Like what actually, for a young person who has an idea and they want to start business here, almost everyone now is social impact. What does it mean exactly for someone who is actually doing business?
So when I started, I didn't even know the term came about a year or two after I started ARED. But it's a term that is anything cool human, you're trying to adapt it, and it's the new thing for the day, and then people ride on this. But for me, impact and enterprise, my definition is somebody that is building something sustainable that also has a positive impact in the communities you're serving. That's really what my definition is of impact enterprise. And technically, impact investors are supposed to focus more on the impact and less on your revenue and the profitability of your business. The reality is totally different. Very few, and I know most of the impact fund out there, very few are really following that terminology. They're looking a lot more on the return of investment than on the impact you're doing. And that's why it's still a struggle, because there is no policies in place to really push those people that call themselves impact investors to really follow into that. But there is out there. I mean, there is some, but a lot of them are not, and they just use that term because it's cool. It allowed them to get some branding and stories and media attention. But that's the reality on the ground. So if you're looking for impact investment, it's like any investment. It's a tough road, man. And I always tell people, investment come when you have proven the concept, right? We have also this problem with the young entrepreneur today, where we register a business and tomorrow we want to raise money. It doesn't work like that. I saved. I sold my previous business. So I used all my saving for 2 years before I could even raise a dime. And the first money I raised was grants and competition. I used to apply 20 to 30 competition every year for the first, I would say, 4 to 5 years. And I used to win maybe 2, 3 a year.
Yeah.
And because nobody wanted to invest. I mean, and then now we see all this cool thing about, and I blame really the media about that, because we have there's a correlation now between raising capital and being successful. We think because you raise money, you're a successful company, which is not true. You know, you're only successful when you when your revenue is higher than your expense. That's the only time you are a successful company. You know, if you think by raising, I can name you a bunch of companies that raise a ton of money and they either bankrupt now or they just sold out. So yeah, so it's impact is a very confusing word, but you know, it is what it is.
But that's great to think that you did all those things with all those challenges are still we're able to keep going. We are approaching the end of our session, but I'm going to take two more questions. One is very specific. I think you briefly touched on it. Someone says, if a young person has 5 million francs, for example, you know, and they want to start a business, what would you advise them? Number two, knowing that it was hard for you to be an employee, did you look back and understand why? Was it just because you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or it's personality you just cannot work for someone else? And being an entrepreneur now who has surely employees, what did you do to motivate them, to keep them excited, to challenge them and ensure their growth?
Yeah, sure. So the first question, with 5 million, what would you do? That's the wrong question. You have to know, you have to find what you like to do. A lot of time, and that's the mistake also I made. I used to chase money, and I used to do businesses solely based on the potential of revenue it can bring. And my first successful business was highly successful, but I hated it after 2 years because the transportation business, I didn't like the business. I didn't like to be in that business. It was very profitable, but I hated it. So you have to find something that you like and trying to build a business around it. And that's the way I would do it. Because again, any business is a long-term game. So, you know, it's like saying, well, I don't want to use that analogy, might not be right, but anyway, you have to find what you like and then build a business around it, find ways to monetize and all those things. That's how I would do. As far as why I couldn't be an employee, I had an authority problem. You know, I was not well, I've been told what to do. I mean, it's just my nature, man. I didn't like, especially when there was people that I knew more about the work than they did, you know, so it just didn't work out, you know, it just didn't work out well.
I'm hoping there's not a lot of Henrys in your company.
No, but you know, I always tell my team, you know, we live in and actually I'll post it probably tomorrow. There's another vlog I did. You know, the concept of employee is changing dramatically. My parents' generation, you work in a company, you find a good company, you spend 30, 40 years until retirement, and then that's it. Nowadays, those days are over. You know, on average, people spend 2 to 3 years in a company. And I push, people want more than just a job. People are looking for fulfillment. They're looking for purpose now. They're more aware of the life we live in and the fact that we only have one life to live. So I always motivate my team to go beyond ARED if possible, because, you know, it's like a bus, you know, you're going to pick people in, you're going to drop people off. And as long as you accept that, then you'll be fine. I mean, but as far as what my team will tell you, I mean, I'm a tough, I'm not going to lie, I'm very tough because I push you to the limit. I want to get the best out of you. So I'm not that, you know, I don't know if I can consider myself, you know, cool and all, but I demand so much because I demand a lot by myself. You know, there's nothing I ask from my team that I don't give myself. You know, I'm extremely driven. You know, so it could be a good and a bad thing. I'm not gonna lie. You know, it doesn't fit for everybody. It's not a fit for everybody. But every company culture varies and change. You're right, so you have to find the right culture that you fit in. But I like people that don't mind being pushed and understand that push is not because I'm picking on you or I'm trying to, point out what you're not doing right and all, but it's really to keep you sharp and go beyond. And most of the guys that I talk to that I work with me and I moved on, they always tell me, thank you, because, you really push me to the limit so I can see my full potential. So that's the type of feedback I like to hear.
You're right. That's great. Two last questions. One, what other sectors in Rwanda would you say have potential and have many business opportunities that young aspiring entrepreneurs could come and tap into? Number two, Rwanda's population is 70% below 30 years of age. So many young people, which is different from European populations and American populations. So you have more investors, big time business people. In Rwanda, it's a lot of young people who are just trying out things. So the question is, what are the advantages of Rwanda being such a young country, and really generally speaking, the African continent? And what are the challenges with that?
Well, the challenge is, I'll start with the last question. I mean, the benefit obviously is that the young people are the drivers of innovation, of new ideas. The young people are the one that drives, the development of a country. So it's definitely a positive on that side because I see, and it's been growing. I mean, I travel so much and I see it all over the continent, the drive the young people have, the fact that not as many young people like my generation want to leave and go abroad, but they really now see some opportunities on the ground. The challenge now is government needs to really do much more, in a sense where we need to support, not just by words, but we need to support some of those innovation. I'm tired of seeing just, conferences and speech, and don't get me wrong, I love that, and I'm talking about as an African, not just as Rwanda and all, but I hear too many speeches. I'm tired of the speeches, man. It's time for action. We need grants, local grants. We need more funding for those guys. We need better taxation programs for the startups. And some of those are getting into, are improving, but they're moving too slow. We need less barriers when you move from one country to another. Africa is still by far the hardest place to do business because we do business now in 5 countries. I can tell you, man, every country I go, it's a whole nother challenge, a whole nother policy. And then going back to the biggest opportunity, hands down, is the agri-tech sector. If I ever decide to do another business, is in the agricultural sector. And I'm not talking about just on the software or app side, but I'm talking about, the global warming is only going to get worse. The environment is only going to get worse. Famine and, finding rich soil to grow food is only going to get scarce. So technology around the agricultural sector is the future. And I can tell you, bio, because we have so much chemicals that we use in the agri sector that's going to have to change. We're polluting. I mean, the future is in agriculture, and not just your traditional agriculture, but technology to improve the yield, to improve the quality, to increase yield and all. That's the future. And the ones that are investing in that sector now will definitely see the benefit in the future. Remember, and I want to end with this, Africa will be around 4 billion people by the end of this century. 4 billion people. That's 4 billion people that you got to feed. That's 4 billion people that you got to, because you see on this COVID-19, economy is on standby. No, but you still got to eat, right? You still need, and that's one thing that we definitely going to have to solve. And I really hope that we're going to see a lot more innovation from the continent instead of the import we're getting so far right now.
The future is agriculture. That's powerful. We are very lucky. We have so many young people studying agriculture at the University of Nebraska and other universities too. So we're counting on them on coming up with big ideas. Well, Henry, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. This was really very inspiring. It was very educative. It was everything. Your journey is inspiring itself. When you add to that the fact that you lived abroad and you came and you overcame the challenges and you're now inspiring so many other young people, that it makes it even more incredible. We thank you very much. We want to thank the network, people who were able to join us today. Thanks so much for sending us the questions, for attending. We would like you to please let us know who the next speaker you'd like to be. You can send us a message on our Instagram, The Bridge Career Services, or send us an email at thebridge@bridgestone.org. We have another guest next week. We have yet to post that on our social media platforms, but be on the lookout for that. Henry, thank you so much.
No, thank you guys, and good luck for everybody.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right.
And have a good day, everyone.